Our next session, Reaching New Audiences for Sustainability, the ABB NASCAR Electrification Partnership.
Electric here at a NASCAR Cup Series event with the ABB number 35 all-electric NASCAR prototype, talking to fans about electrification. Does it take too long to charge an EV?
From what I've heard, yeah. Compared to what it takes to fill up a gas car, I'd say for sure.
No, not at all. I think that it is the right amount of time for how long you get on the road.
I haven't had to charge one, so I don't know. But I'm sure they're improving technology, month to month at the moment. So yeah.
Yes. Doesn't it take 8 hours?
I really don't know how long it takes. I have no idea, but I would like to learn.
People were, hey, is this the car you've been testing? How fast is it? How much does it weigh? What's the power like? They had so many questions, and that just shows that they're interested on what's going on. And I really saw so many young kids, guys and girls that didn't even have their driver's license yet, 10, 12, 14 years old, and it just looks cool.
At all going into this partnership with NASCAR that you're essentially targeting an audience that to some degree has maybe been a little bit reticent about embracing electric vehicles?
I think that's why it's so important.
Please welcome Lacey Schmidtke, Miss Go Electric, Chris Shigas, Vice President ABB, and David Reagan, NASCAR driver.
Well, hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for Reaching New Audiences for Sustainability. I am very excited to be joined here today by Chris Shigas, the VP of Strategic Partnerships with ABB, and David Reagan, NASCAR driver over here. My name is Miss Go Electric, also known Lacey Schmidtke. I mostly go by Miss Go Electric nowadays, but that is because I am the host of a media brand called Miss Go Electric, featuring electric transportation. Now, I am really looking forward to talking to you guys about what this project that you guys all saw a video on behind us, because there's a lot that went into this, and it is opening up new audiences as we discussed. But Chris, I want to start off with you and ask you, why did ABB partner with NASCAR on a project like this?
Absolutely. So ABB is an electrification and automation leader. We help industries run leaner and cleaner. NASCAR came to us with this partnership idea, and on a number of levels, from looking at what electric racing could look like in the United States, but the infrastructure it takes to do that, and energy education is a key component. So we are also a founding partner of NASCAR Impact. That's the sustainability program of NASCAR's own goals to reach net zero in its operations by 2035. So as we look track by track by track at this huge infrastructure across the United States, how can we help NASCAR run more efficiently and more sustainably? And it's been a really great partnership. We launched last year. In the meantime, Ford has launched a EV prototype NASCAR. Chevrolet has launched an EV prototype NASCAR. And last month in Chicago, we had all three cars on the track in an exhibition. And so it's been a powerful program for ABB and for NASCAR combined.
And what I will say is I've had a little bit of experience with this as well, because I went to some of the races with ABB and I got to speak to some NASCAR fans, and it was like going in.
What did you hear?
Yeah, it was actually really interesting to hear, because I was a little nervous going into a race weekend that maybe there would be a lot of resistance for electrification in NASCAR. But what I have found, as you probably have seen in the videos, that a lot of people were really open to coming up to the display and asking about the vehicle. But not only that, they shared a lot of their insights as to where those limitations were for them for EVs and what their perspectives were. But I felt like they welcomed it with open arms because they love speed. like get to the point, is they really love speed. So they were really open to seeing maybe even a series show up with NASCAR. But I know somebody that has some experience driving around this vehicle. So David Reagan, can you talk a little bit about that, on what has been like to drive around in this 1,300 horsepower machine?
That's right. And Lacey, you've been at a lot of our events. You've seen the cars on the racetrack. And, you know, I'm privileged to be the one that NASCAR called to say, we've got this vision of what a race car could look like in the future that's 100% battery electric. Would you mind to make a few laps and come give us your thoughts? And, you know, I thought this concept that became a reality a few years ago, that we would have a lot of issues working through some of the propulsion system. A lot of adjustability and technology went into building this car. And so I did have my patience when I showed up to the racetrack, but I was blown away with the vendors that NASCAR used all around the world to assemble this race car that's really the first of its kind here in North America, with the NASCAR nameplate on it. And it went so well. And like you mentioned, Lacey, I'm a race car driver. I like to go fast. And this car is extremely fast. It's a lot of fun to drive. And I was one of those traditional NASCAR kids growing up. I've raced in the sport of NASCAR since I was out of high school. And so this was really my first experience with a full battery electric vehicle. And I was blown away, again, at the technology, the ease of adjusting how the car drove at different types of racetracks. And I've been educated a lot, and I've had a lot of fun along the way. So I'm grateful to have had the opportunity with ABB and NASCAR to explore, you know, what this might look like in the future. And I've got to do a lot of donuts, a lot of burnouts. I've got to drive at road courses, at street courses, at historical ovals on the NASCAR circuit. So we've had a lot of fun, and we've only scratched the surface.
Well, to that point, what is the biggest difference between driving something like this versus what you've been used to for so long with a NASCAR?
Well, my ears don't ring a full day after driving a full battery electric vehicle for several hours. You know, driving the ICE engines and those traditional cars that we've all been around over the years, you do learn to drive off the sound that it makes, and different you know, senses that you kind of feel behind the wheel. But with a car that essentially doesn't make much noise at all, you kind of pick up on other things, like the tires making a little more noise. You can smell the brakes you know, being more efficient. You can drive it harder because of the brake regeneration. The electric motors are helped to use to slow the car down, but also harness some of that power to recharge the battery under high braking situations. So you feel like a Superman out there driving this car. And then it translated into me getting my first battery electric vehicle as a daily driver. I drive the Ford Mustang Mach-E, and it's almost like a game. How efficient can I be behind the wheel? And you learn to appreciate that quiet efficientness that you have in an EV. So not only does it translate from the passenger cars that, you know, you see the GM cars on display behind the curtain, but also into the race cars that are going 180, 200 miles an hour.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point of, you know, there are some differences. Sound is one of the big ones. A lot of people go to a race to hear and to feel the sound when they are there in the stands. But Chris, how do you have these conversations to create more engagement with those types of audiences that are so accustomed to that NASCAR lifestyle of sounds and experiences?
That's right. And it's a really important part of the program. We want to have better conversations about energy. And right now in the United States, there are two different conversations going on. And what I noticed is sometimes we'll say things like carbon neutral, and then I lose half my country. Doesn't want to hear anything I say anymore. And so what we decided to do was bring this conversation to the heart of America. And that's what NASCAR helps us do. And what I've learned is you can't shame someone into sustainability. And what we decided to do with this program is to show respect and listen. And when you show someone respect and you listen, because if someone doesn't have an experience with an EV, the fear that they have is very real to them. I can't dismiss that.
Absolutely.
So when you show respect, then something magical happens. They start to ask questions. How fast does it go? What's the 0 to 60? What's regenerative braking mean? And that's what we mean by having better conversations about energy. And this, with the two different conversations going on, this race car is a platform to bring those conversations together.
Yeah, and that's actually also a good point, because David just mentioned to me when we were behind the curtain here that he had gotten into a Mustang Mach-E that's now his own car. But can you explain what the feelings of the experience of you driving in the race car is from now becoming an EV owner, and how that transition was? Because at the same time, you don't want to discourage people. They have to have their own experiences, and that's exactly what you mentioned to me back there.
Yeah, and I had my own experience, and I think Chris really said it eloquently, that you have to, everybody does have different situations. You know, we all grew up in different areas around the country. We've got, you know, what makes our, you know, transportation needs important. And for me, you know, as a race car driver, I've always just driven the ICE engine at traditional, you know, stock car events. But the technology around the world, when you travel to Europe or look at Formula One, the Formula E series, that technology is emerging all around us. And so I think first off, NASCAR did a great job of looking into the future of what will this look like? Not necessarily today, but we've got to prepare for what the evolution of electric propulsion looks like in high-performance vehicles that our fans will all embrace, that the market share is continuing to evolve, and I'm a prime example of that. I would have never purchased a full EV car for my daily driver if it wasn't for the experience that I had at a racetrack, not only driving the EV, but learning about some of the charging and talking to the team that built the battery pack and learning about brake regeneration. I probably would have had some real funny sound bites, Lacey, if you would have interviewed me, you know, a year or two ago at a racetrack.
Actually, might have some in the files.
Yeah, so don't pull those out yet. But I think that's the experience that I've had with the race fans we've interacted with at the racetrack, at different trade shows, at events like this. But even the other race car drivers, I think one thing that we all have in common is we want to compete, we want to go fast, and we want to push this kind of man and machine to their limits. And all the race car drivers and the NASCAR guys specifically that I've been around and talked to, and that they've had the opportunity to drive, you know, either the Ford, the Chevrolet, or the ABB prototype, they've all been blown away. But with the technology, the ease of driving, the fun, and the icing on the cake is the sustainability and the zero emissions that race car has. And so I'm you know, a student of what you guys have been preaching, and I've learned. And like I said earlier, I've had the fortunate opportunity to get to drive and to have a lot of fun. But the other drivers are showcasing the same interest as our fans are about what's under the hood, you know, what type of battery, the recharge, all those same questions that, you know, someone's going to ask going to a car dealership to buy their first car. That's the same stuff the race car drivers are asking.
For sure.
Lacey, on your social media channels for Miss Go Electric, have you seen trends or changes in the education of what's going on your channels?
Yeah, I think the biggest concern right now is affordability. And so people want to get into an EV, but the issue is that it's a little too expensive for them right now. But the good news is that we have series in electric racing that ends up development trickles down to the customer, and that becomes a little bit more attainable the more that we advance that engineering. So I do think that we're getting to a stage that it's becoming more accessible for people. I just actually spent some time with the new Nissan Leaf on the media drive just a couple weeks ago, and that's under $30,000, and it's a very compelling EV. We have several other brands that are going to be coming out with affordable models, and so I think the trajectory of introducing more electrification in different aspects of different industries is what's going to help bring that affordability to people and what they're looking for.
Well, you know, at ABB, we look at the electrification of everything. And transportation is important, but there's also manufacturing is coming back to the United States at a record pace. We have to meet the electrical needs of data centers and semiconductor manufacturers and new buildings and the utilities. So when we look at the big picture of the demand curves that our country's facing right now, they're enormous. I saw a study about greenfield upstarts on manufacturing, and it's a curve that I've never seen in my career. So to be able to meet that energy curve demand and at the same time do it with fewer emissions. And these are the types of education that we're taking to America. We've over the past year, we've brought this car to 14 states. We go to NASCAR races, we go to customer sites, we go to our factories, we go to energy policy events. Here we are at Climate Week, New York City. And the conversations are important because these are the decisions our country has to make.
Well, and to that point, how is ABB helping electric racing advance?
Yeah, so we are looking at all of the infrastructure it would take to do that. And not only in the racing itself, but really, these are giant events, right? So NASCAR is doing its carbon baseline measurements, but when you have a track that sometimes isn't being used at all, and then sometimes it has 120,000 people come in, and you look at, hey, can we make the HVAC systems more efficient? Can we look at microgrids? Can we look at geothermal and the AI it takes to look ahead in the future and say, well, we have these events coming up, historical weather patterns show this, and we need to start pumping to meet the demand for that event at any given time. I think lots of this infrastructure are great candidates for microgrids. And of course, ABB wants to make sure that we keep the utility grid stable. And that's what we can do with energy that's flowing at that scale.
Chris, I think the big thing or the takeaway that I've gotten from my education on being a part of this project and learning about the ABB company is you guys are just the catalyst to start the conversation, get things in motion. And Lacey, one thing that I can relate to is just try something new sometimes. When you're always accustomed to doing the same thing over and over, like I have been for majority of my life, driving the same type of automobile, racing the same type of car, thinking about transportation the way that I've always thought about it. This project opened my eyes to a lot of what's evolving around our world, and I think you and your team do such a good job of educating the public and using NASCAR as that platform that reaches millions of people from California to upstate New York to Miami, Florida, to the races this weekend in Kansas City, Missouri. So I think that it's been a fun project. I've been the lucky one that gets to drive it. I keep telling everyone we need a two-seater so I can give some rides to let everyone know the power and the fun that I'm having. But it's been a fun project, educating a lot of race fans, including myself. And I think we've only scratched the surface for what that transportation and propulsion looks like in all of the automobiles that we have.
Yeah, it seems like it's an unsuspecting audience and they wouldn't welcome you with open arms, but what I've seen so far with being at several races, race fans like racing and they like things that are fast, so they're pretty open to it.
And with a name like Miss Go Electric,
everyone's
going to come and want to talk, so that's good.
Well, I will say it's also important to realize that if you are submerged in an industry where you're using a lot of terminology or a lot of language that kind of is not as attainable for a lot of customers to really understand what you're trying to get across, the education portion is really important to break it down in a more simplified way. And I think that this is a project that's definitely doing that.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you guys all for joining us today, and have a good one. Right on that.
Perfect. Thank you, ma'am.